Special Envoy Hans Grunberg in Sana'a to pressure Houthis to implement the truce and lift Taiz siege. Huge fire erupts in the area of the oil port in Aden and causes considerable damage. State of Kuwait announces commitment to increase economic and humanitarian support for Yemen. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English News with me, Rana Swaylam. In a second visit to Sana'a, since he was appointed, Special Envoy Hans Grunberg said that his visit aimed to strengthen the truce and pressure Houthi officials to immediately lift Taiz siege and open main roads in the city. This report has more details.
Hans Grunberg, the UN envoy for Yemen, arrived in Sana'a on Wednesday to persuade Houthi officials to remove the blockade on Taiz and unblock certain roadways connecting the governorates. Previously, Yemeni government officials and Houthi rebel leaders failed in 2 rounds of discussions in Amman, Jordan, to address the Taiz situation. Fears are mounting that Houthi stubbornness in this matter would jeopardize the present UN-sponsored truce, which has been extended until August 2nd. During a meeting with coup loyalists from Taiz on Wednesday, Houthi commander Abdul Malik al-Houthi vowed to continue fighting for control of the liberated territories under the control of the Yemeni government. Grunberg, for his part, said he will meet with the rebel leadership to discuss suggestions for restoring roads into Taiz, which has been closed off since 2015. I hope we will have constructive discussions on our proposal for reopening roads in Taiz and other governorates, as well as economic and humanitarian measures in the way forward, said Grunberg upon arriving in Sana'a. Yemenis have seen the truce's tangible benefits. We have witnessed a significant positive shift, and we have a responsibility to safeguard it and deliver on its potential for peace in Yemen, he told reporters. One of the discussions of the truce was to hold discussions on Taiz, as well as resume commercial flights out of Sana'a and to enable fuel tankers into the vital port of Hodeidah, which is also under Houthi hands. The truce extension was lauded by Grunberg as a good indicator of the party's determination to sustain and implement the truce. Taiz has been under siege since late 2014, when Yemen's civil conflict commenced. Lifting the embargo would allow citizens to move freely and have access to humanitarian supplies. Residents of Taiz have held many protest marches to demand that the siege be lifted and landmines be cleared from the city's main roadways. The end of the Taiz siege is the final significant provision to be met under the agreement signed by the country's warring parties as part of their April truce.
A huge fire broke out in the Yemeni oil company in Buraika. Company workers confirmed that the fire broke out at the oil port, which is designated to receive fuel tankers and ships. Citizens said that the fire trucks beyond Buraika district rushed to the scene to help put out the fire. An American expert in national security affairs revealed that Iran is implicated in delivering illegal weapons to the Houthi militia. She added that the United Nations did not pressure the Houthi militia to lift the siege on the city of Taiz and open roads. This helped the delivery of weapons and fighters to the Houthi fronts in violation of international humanitarian law. The United Nations Organization for Migration revealed that more than 3,000 African immigrants entered Yemen during May. The IOM's displacement tracking matrix recorded 3,228 migrants who entered Yemen compared to the entry of 5,212 migrants in April. The report attributed the decline in the entry of migrants to Yemen to the increase in security measures on the coasts of Yemen and Djibouti. The United Nations has confirmed that African immigrants in Yemen live in dire situations. They are subject of work abuse in the government-run areas, and those who are in the areas under Houthi militias' control are being recruited as fighters. This report has more details.
The UN Migration Agency said it aims to help transfer at least 6,750 Ethiopian migrants from war-torn Yemen to their home country in the coming month. The International Organization for Migration said it has transferred more than 600 migrants, including 60 unaccompanied children, to Ethiopia on 3 flights so far. More flights were planned between Yemen's southern port city of Aden and the Ethiopian capital of Addis Ababa. IOM's chief of mission in Yemen said Migrants stranded in Yemen are some of those most affected by the deteriorating humanitarian situation in the country. Conflict in Africa has pushed people to resume taking the trip of death from the continent across the Gulf of Aden to reach Yemen and eventually the Gulf countries. The illegal activity spiked in late 2021 after a notable dip. Migrants from Ethiopia, Djibouti, and Somalia often risk death by riding in boats from their countries, seeking safer shores in Yemen. They began their dangerous journey from Ethiopia, departing towards the Mandeb Strait and reaching Lahj and Taiz shores. Yemen's civil war has not prevented migrants from entering the country, desperate to make their way to neighboring Saudi Arabia to find jobs as housekeepers, servants, and construction workers. And the refugees in Khor Maksar area rely on donations from the residents, and they have offered to wash cars, as they complain about the meager donations provided by the International Organization for Migration and United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Last year, around 27,700 migrants embarked on the arduous journey from the Horn of Africa to Yemen, according to the IOM. As wars always push people from bad to worse, as they knock on new doors in an attempt to find hope, however, they are driven to fate worse than they expected on Yemen coastal shores.
U.S. support for the UN plan has addressed the imminent threat of safer oil tanker. The Department of State is working with Congress to provide $10 million in support of the UN plan. They stated that an oil spill or leak would cost the world billions to clean up, devastate Red Sea marine life, and destroy the livelihoods of fishermen. State of Kuwait has announced it will increase support for Yemen. This commitment was made during the visit of the head of the Presidential Leadership Council to Kuwait. This report has more details.
Kuwait has vowed to enhance its support for Yemen in a variety of political, economic, and humanitarian areas, and to support UN efforts to establish complete peace and stability in the nation. Kuwaiti Crown Prince Sheikh Mishal Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah met with Yemeni Presidential Leadership Council Chairman Dr. Rashad Al-Alimi and his delegation in Bayan Palace on Wednesday. Sheikh Mishal emphasized his earnest wish for Yemen to attain peace, security, and overall stability. He reaffirmed Kuwait's complete support for all coalition efforts to promote legitimacy, particularly the Saudi effort at the political, economic, and humanitarian levels. Al-Alimi thanked Kuwait, the prince, the administration, and the people for their assistance over the last decade in avoiding the collapse of the state and deterring the coup militia sponsored by the Iranian regime. According to Yemen's ambassador to Kuwait, Ali bin Safa, the visit was successful. The chairman of the Presidential Leadership Council and his accompanying delegation reviewed the political situation and recent events, including the UN-sponsored truce with the Kuwaiti leadership. Kuwait has excellent relations with the parties in the region and the whole world, and has shown its commitment to the Yemeni legitimacy, Safa said. During the discussions, authorities decided to restore the Arab and Kuwaiti finances that had been halted owing to the conflict. They also examined a number of files and health, education services, and assistance for expatriates in Kuwait. Kuwaiti officials also promised to reconsider increasing support in various cooperation programs, particularly at the economic, humanitarian, political, and service levels, such as increasing the number of academic scholarships in the security and military field and providing the necessary facilities for Yemeni residents and expatriates, as well as their children in Kuwait.
SAM organization made an urgent appeal to the international community to intervene and pressure the Houthi militia to release the 4 journalists. These journalists have been forcibly disappeared for nearly 7 years and subjected to various kinds of violations by the Houthi militia without any legal justification. A citizen was killed in the explosion of a mine left by the Houthi militia in a neighborhood east of Taiz. The Emergency Department of the Public Health and Population Office in Taiz said that the citizen was killed in the explosion of a mine left by the Houthis east of the city. The United Nations has proposed a gradual mechanism to lift Taiz siege and open main roads in the city. The proposal has been given to both warring parties to be considered, while the government has dealt with the all UN plans with responsibility. Houthi militia seems to reject such plans and claim to do it unilaterally. More details are within the following report.
The United Nations submitted a proposal to the Yemeni government and the Houthi militia on lifting the siege on Taiz. Delegations from the government and the Houthis have been holding a second round of negotiations on ending the siege in the Jordanian capital Amman. The government appealed on Tuesday to the international community, European Union ambassadors and United States envoy to Yemen to exert more pressure on the Houthis to reopen the main routes leading to Taiz. The Houthis have been resisting this demand, suggesting instead the opening of dirt roads, in what was seen as an attempt to thwart UN efforts to end the siege. The government delegation stated that after 2 weeks of talks, the Houthi militia continue to insist on opening dirt roads that don't help in easing the siege or the suffering of the people. The UN proposal calls for opening 5 roads, including the main route leading to the province. The government delegation hailed UN envoy Hans Grunberg and his team's efforts in the negotiations, hoping they would exert greater pressure on the Houthi militia and prevent them from stalling and undermining the nationwide truce. Ending the siege on Taiz is among the main points of the UN truce, which was extended for another 2 months last week. Grunberg issued a statement on Monday to sum up the Amman negotiations, saying he had submitted a revised proposal on the phased reopening of roads, including an implementation mechanism and guarantees for the safety of civilian travelers, based on the discussions with both sides. He further added, this is the first step in their collective efforts to lift restrictions on the freedom of movement of Yemeni women, men, and children within the country.
Senior Houthi leader was killed in clashes with Yemeni government forces. The Houthi militia stated that the leader of the northern province of Al-Jawf was buried in the Yemeni capital Sana'a. The clashes appear to have taken place despite the renewal of the truce between the two sides last week. Coming next. In Hadramaut, repeated closure of Al-Sheikh port exacerbates suffering of employees and fishermen.
This is Yemen, the land of the two gardens, a treasure trove of history.
Welcome back. Al-Sheikh port in Hadramaut has been closed for more than 6 months. Such closure has cast a shadow on the employees and fishermen as well. This report has more on the story.
Here in one of the most famous marine economic sites in Hadramaut Governorate, Yemen Today channel had a reconnaissance tour on the reality of the most important ports overlooking the Arabian Sea, the port of Al-Sheikh, a history story that witnessed wide fame and an active commercial and economic movement during the years before the catastrophe in 2011.
Al-Sheikh port has been closed for 5 months now. Since 2019, whenever they close the port, we hold protests. So they open it for a while and then they close it again. Now we are in 2022 and it has been 5 months with no commercial activity. No one knows the reasons behind this closure. We are around 3,000 employees here in the port. That was our only source of income and the way we provide the needs of our families.
The issuance of a number of decisions by the government and the governorate requiring central supply, which according to those concerned here resulted in the suspension of the salaries of the port's custom workers, who are approximately 3,000 workers who were deprived from their source of income and livelihood. The port project faltered in addition to the issuance of the demarcation decisions, which made the owners of imported vehicles go to the port of Nishtun in Al Mahra Governorate due to the facilities provided to them there compared to the port of Al Shahr, according to what officials here confirm, which caused huge financial losses.
بعد توجيهات المحافظ بالتوريد المركزي.
After the governor's directives to central supply and close the boxes in which the income of car services were entering, we started to apply the instructions. This port was a great source of income to the governorate. Its revenues reached 300 million per month. Why would they lose such a great income to the state?
Continuous suffering and constant losses. Protest vigils are organized from time to time, and their enforcers demand the resumption of activity at the Shahr port to resume its commercial activity as it was before the chaos that affected everything beautiful in the country.
UNESCO has launched the virtual photo exhibition Invisible Connections in collaboration with the Office of Special Envoy for Yemen. The exhibition has featured the works of 11 Yemeni men and women photographers. UNDP has screened the documentary From Yemen with Love in partnership with the Royal Film Commission in Jordan. The organization has stated that the documentary was screened to witness the beauty of Yemen from north to south and from east to west. This documentary is available in both languages, Arabic and English, in the Jordanian capital Amman. In ties, the stifling crisis of oil derivatives continues after the rise in oil prices. Citizens complained about the continuation of the oil shortage for the second day, at a time the official petrol stations appear to be closed to cars and motorcycles, without knowing the real reasons behind the crisis in the city. A tough oil derivatives crisis has hit both the government and the Houthi militias controlled areas. This comes after some ships, which are full of fuel, have entered Hodeidah port as part of the UN truce. This report has more details.
Dozens of vehicles lined up again in long queues in front of fuel stations at the capital Sana'a. Sources warned that the Houthi militia loyal to Iran will create a new round of fuel crisis. Eyewitnesses in Sana'a said dozens of vehicles stopped in front of fuel stations to obtain oil derivatives. This comes at a time when the official spokesman for the oil company, which is under the control of the Houthi militia, announced that the supply situation is the same. The Houthi militia has fabricated a stifling fuel crisis over the past period, with the aim of officially raising its prices and making profit by selling fuel on the black market at double prices. According to sources, the militia confiscates large quantities of fuel arriving through the port of Hodeidah and unload them into its military supply without paying their prices. Under the truce in Yemen between the government and the Houthi rebels announced last month by the United Nations Special Envoy for Yemen, Hans Grunberg, the opening of Hodeidah port is stipulated. This should allow for the entry of humanitarian aid and oil derivatives through Hodeidah port. Residents of the Yemeni capital and the rest of the areas under their control are suffering from a stifling crisis in fuel, which is usually available on the black market at very high prices.
5 Yemeni women have died due to medical mistakes in Al Sab'in Maternity and Childhood Hospital. The hospital is run by the Houthi militia, and its administration has opened an investigation into these incidents. The local sources indicated that emergency cases suffer from fainting and coma, in addition to memory loss. Here's a reminder of the main headlines. Special Envoy Hans Grunberg in Sana'a to pressure Houthis to implement the truce and lift Tai's siege. Huge fire erupts in the area of the oil port in Aden and causes considerable damage. State of Kuwait announces commitment to increase economic and humanitarian support for Yemen. This is the end of the news. For more, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Yemen Today English. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.